2xKO is Riot's upcoming fighting game, and its roster is filled with a bunch of League of Legends characters. We have 5 characters confirmed on release, and we know that Katarina and Jinx were at least in it at some point. But what about the characters we don't know yet? Like, subscribe, and let's talk about which characters should be in 2xKO. God, the name genuinely sucks. So, to start off with, I'm going to get rid of all the characters that I think were either too obvious, or were already covered in the video that I stole this idea from. Everyone say thank you, Gecko Squirrel! So, for the list of obvious characters, we've got Set, duh, Vi, duh plus Arcane, Jace. Arcane plus his dual stances from League would probably make for a pretty interesting fighting game character. Samira, she would literally just be Dante from Marvel vs. Capcom. Udyr, because he is the most obvious option for a stance character. Riven, she basically already has fighting game combos. And finally Viego, because they'll probably put him in as like a boss or for some Ruination event, because he's literally designed for that shit. The story mode would be super simple. You fight through a bunch of corrupted versions of the characters that are already in the game. The final boss is Viego, you defeat him while saved. Think almost similar to like World of Light in Smash Bros. And with that out of the way, let's start talking about the characters I think would just be interesting in the game. Starting off with Camille. In terms of visuals, I think she'd be quite unique as this highly acrobatic character that only attacks with their legs. And I also just think Camille's base design is really cool looking, so I'd like to see it into its art style. In terms of gameplay, I honestly think there's a ton for Riot to work with. One thing they could do is mix Camille's Q and W to give her some slower, long-range moves that, if she lands them, it could allow her to use enhanced versions of her other attacks, making them faster, do more damage, or even giving them entirely different animations. But I think the biggest part of her kit they can use is her hookshot. Allowing her to grapple to the floor, the walls, even potentially the ceiling, could give Camille some incredibly unique movement that she could use to mix up the opponent or dodge whatever they're throwing at her. And if they wanted to really focus on the hookshot, they could allow it to hit the enemy player. This could tether them to the ground and prevent them from moving, similar to how Camille's ultimate actually works in League of Legends. Or they could have it so it tethers them to Camille herself, similar to how Baiken does it in Guilty Gear, preventing both her and her opponent from being able to move away from each other. Either way, just putting the opponent in a situation where they just have to deal with whatever Camille throws at them. And 2xKO specifically could do something where, if this move costs a meter, it could prevent the opponent from swapping out their character, meaning that Camille can just absolutely shred one of the opponent's characters. And considering Camille in League of Legends has high mobility, decent poke, and really good single target damage, I think this fits the character really well. Right, for this next character, I was tempted to put them in the obvious list, but since I think I can talk about some interesting stuff with them, we're going to put them in the video. Let's talk about Warwick. I think his gameplay would be pretty much the opposite of Camille's, which when you consider the lore of the characters works really well. But Camille's gameplay might require finding gaps in your opponent or using the hookshot to maneuver around them. Warwick wouldn't. Warwick's gameplay would be some honest to god unga bunga. You run at the opponent, either you die or they do. Either way, you're not pressing the back button, and blocking is for cowards. I could see Warwick having a few moves with forward movement just to allow him to get close to the opponent. But I think what would differentiate the character would be his passives. I could see Riot giving Warwick something that gives him buffs the lower health he is, and also the lower health his opponent is. These buffs could be speed, damage, or anything else Riot can think of. But what it would result in is a character that, the longer that the game goes, the more damage everyone is, and the more blood that's been spilled, the stronger the character is. And I think this savage, always offensive character, who always has a chance for a comeback, actually fits Warwick pretty damn well. A lot of fighting games have a big who grabs people, and I don't see why 2xKO should be the exception. So let's talk about who would be a really good fit for this role. Off Set, I already mentioned you. So I actually had to decide between 2 different characters for this one, Maokai and Tahm Kench. The thing that decided it in the end for me was Maokai's really big and probably wouldn't fit on the screen. But this isn't really much of a loss, considering Tahm Kench actually makes for a pretty interesting grappler. In Tahm Kench's passive, it says that he puts his immense body behind his attacks, which pretty much spells out how the character will play. Slow moves that do a ton of damage, and I could see a lot of them also having armor to represent his E. The part where his kit would be different from other big grapplers could be taken from his W. It's pretty common for big grapplers in fighting games to just have to tank a bunch of their opponent's attacks to get in close so that they can actually do any damage. But what if we had a big grappler who could just teleport in front of you, behind you, even underneath you? It can make him way more fun to play and way scarier to play against, because now you always have an option to surprise your opponent, and if you catch them off guard, they're probably going to take a ton of damage. But since he's a grappler, he should probably have some grabs, and Riot has a really easy one here. It's literally his ulting game. He just eats the opponent, it does a bunch of damage, he spits them out. And I think this big tanky grappler who it can just force their way through the opponent's attacks, but also has this opportunity to catch the opponent off guard, would be something that's quite unique, and I could absolutely see people quite liking it. And now, since they are a fighting game archetype, we're going to talk about a zoner. You only get one though, because I don't want to do more. Now, there are plenty of characters in League that could be a zoner. Pretty much all of the ranged characters in the game could be made into one. But since we're talking about the most interesting characters could be into its Qiyana, let's talk about a character that would do a bit more than just spamming range attacks. Let's talk about Xayah. Now, Xayah's Q and W aren't going to be the abilities I focus on here. The main two I'm going to talk about are going to be her passive and her E. To summarize, Xayah can throw feathers onto the ground and then pull them back, dealing damage when she pulls them back. This is an interesting concept for a fighting game. Now, the best way I can think of doing this is that Xayah has multiple moves which throw out feathers. Now, if these feathers get blocked by the opponent, they're gone. However, if they're able to hit the floor or the wall without getting blocked, they remain there for a few seconds. Now, while those feathers remain stuck into the wall or the floor, she's able to use a separate move to call those feathers back, and as those feathers fly back to her, they deal damage to the opponent. Basically the same as how it works in League, except, without rooting them. What this could result in is a zoner that has to decide whether or not they want to just spam their opponents with attacks that could just get blocked and be ineffective, or if they want to focus on spreading feathers to other places, which they can then use to their advantage, but at the cost of letting the opponent approach. Then if Riot did want to put her R in the game, they could have it be a super move that has her jump in the air and spread feathers everywhere at the cost of some meter. Now, I already mentioned that Udyr is the most obvious option for a stance character, and to be honest, he's the one I think is going to get put in the game, but I'm going to discuss a possible alternative. Now, League has quite a few dual stance characters, usually one range, one melee. However, there is actually a character that fits into the multi-stance archetype pretty decently, other than Udyr, and that would be Qiyana. It would be super easy for Riot to have the different elements that she can control represent different stances. Her neutral form can be fairly well-rounded, but not excelling at anything. Her water form can be used for poking the opponent out and limiting their movement and attack options to try and frustrate them into making a mistake. Her grass form can be more evasive and focused on getting in on the opponent. And Earth would focus on doing a ton of damage once you actually get a chance to hit them. Now, it's very likely that if Qiyana does release as a stance character, Riot's going to have to find some way of making her different from Udyr, and the easy way for Riot to do that is by using her in-game passive. Whereas Udyr might be focused on using the correct stance at the correct time, Qiyana could be actively encouraged to switch between her different stances to either increase her damage or give her extra bonus effects whenever she attacks. They could also do this the other way around, considering Udyr's in-game passive also encourages him to switch between stances. Right, so I actually re-recorded this segment during editing because I originally chose Annie and Tibbers for a puppet character, and then I realized I was stupid. So the character that fits the puppet archetype way better is Kindred. The way they will play is pretty simple. Kindred is the main body. Wolf can't actually take any damage. Maybe he can be hit to get rid of him, similar to how Eddie works in Guilty Gear Strive. Since Tuetsko is really big on insane looking combos, they might have it so that both Wolf and Kindred can attack at the same time, or they might take some inspiration from Kindred's E and have it so if Kindred attacks a certain number of times it empowers Wolf's next attack, or vice versa as well, or maybe if you weave the attacks in between each other it does more damage. In terms of Lamb's solo move list, she'll probably have fairly long-range attacks that won't do quite as much damage just because they'll actually want to encourage players to use Wolf. Lamb will probably have pretty good mobility, and I could see them having a level 3 super that saves either themselves or their teammates, similar to how Kindred's R works in League of Legends. Now, this last character might be a bit of a surprise because even though they fit almost perfectly into a fighting game, they're not actually in League of Legends yet. And that character is not the bunny girl, which I'm sure some people are disappointed about. It's Ambessa Merdada. Just look at her design and tell me she doesn't fit perfectly into a fighting game. Now, obviously, we don't have a champion kit to base this off of, so we can't get that good a read on how she might play. But we do actually have enough information to at least do a little theorizing. The information that we've been given is that she'll bring Noxie and Domination to the Rift, and that she has both strength and speed, and can sidestep attacks with surprising agility. Now, this actually gives us a decent amount to work with. I could see her being a really high pressure character who baits the opponent into attacking, which she can cause to whiff using either a quick backdash or some other kind of dodge. And then of course she follows up the whiff with a massive amount of damage. Now, this playstyle is actually not super uncommon in fighting games, but what might make this character a little different is she's pretty big. I don't know if her cannon height is available anywhere, but seeing this larger character move with surprising speed would just be a cool addition to the game. So those are all the characters that I think would either be really good in the game or would just make really interesting fighting game characters. But even with my immense genius, I can't think of everything, so please leave your suggestions for characters in the comments below. Also like and subscribe. I only say this like once or twice per video, so I need to start upping those numbers. Okay, and that's the end of the video. Massive thank you to all the people who upload 2xgo footage. Without it, you guys would be staring at a purple void and my beautiful mask way more. You already know to like and subscribe, but you may not know that I stream on Twitch, so come check me out over there. You can get mad at me about how I didn't include your favorite character. Either way, thanks for watching, and see you next time.